It's July, and you already know how this one ends. December shows up and you say the sentence. Where did the year go? You said it last year. Somebody's going to say it in the comments under this. And there's a standard explanation that's everywhere. You've probably repeated it yourself. Every year is a smaller slice of your life than the last one, so every year feels smaller. That explanation is 150 years old, and when researchers finally went and tested it, it failed. Okay, so where it comes from. A French philosopher named Paul Janet wrote it down in 1877. It's usually called the proportional theory or the ratio theory. It goes like this. When you're 10, a year is a tenth of everything you have ever lived. When you're 50, that same year is a 50th. Same 365 days. Much smaller fraction of you. So it feels smaller. And honestly, it's a lovely idea. It's simple, and it explains the feeling perfectly. It also makes a prediction, and that's the part nobody ever mentions. Because if the feeling actually tracks the fraction, you can just do the arithmetic. A 60-year-old should feel time running 4 times faster than it did at 15, twice as fast as at 30. Those aren't my numbers. That's what the theory outputs. So researchers ask people directly, how much faster does time feel now than when you were half your age? Pooled across those studies, the average answer was about 1.5. 1.5 against a prediction of 4. There's a gentler version from a psychologist named Lemlich in 1975 that uses a square root instead of a straight fraction. His version predicts 2. Still too big. So the feeling is real, and the math everyone uses to explain it overshoots by a factor of 2 or 3, and that's the gentle problem. Here's the bigger one. In 2005, 2 researchers in Munich, Mark Wittmann and Sandra Lehnhoff, sent interviewers into the homes of 499 people across Germany and Austria, aged 14 to 94. They didn't ask one question about time. They asked 6. How fast does time usually pass? How fast do you expect the next hour to go? Then the last week, the last month, the last year, and the last 10 years. If time genuinely speeds up as you age, all 6 of those should move together. They didn't. On 5 of the 6, age explained about 1% of the answer. Basically nothing. A 70-year-old and a 20-year-old tell you roughly the same thing about how fast last week went. Only one question moved. How fast did the last 10 years pass? And there, age explained about 9%. That's the whole effect. It lives inside one question, about one very long interval. Then William Friedman and Steve Janssen checked it. 1,865 adults, 2 countries ages 16 to 80. Same result. Age differences were, in their words, very small, except for the 10-year question. But they measured something else at the same time. And this is the part I can't stop thinking about. They asked people how rushed they felt. Ordinary stuff. Are you often short on time? Do you feel busy? And that lined up with feeling like time was flying at 0.32. For this kind of research, that's a solid, real relationship. Their own line is that it's more than 7 times as strong as the effect of age. Read that again. How rushed you feel predicts this about 7 times better than how old you are. Which means age might not be the variable at all. Age might just be the thing that arrives carrying a mortgage and a calendar full of other people's meetings. Okay, so the feeling is real, at least over long stretches, and something is producing it. And the strongest account says it isn't about perception at all. It's about memory. William James wrote it down in 1890, and nobody has said it better since. In youth, he said, we can have an absolutely new experience every hour of the day. But as each passing year converts some of that into automatic routine, which we hardly note at all, quote, the days and the weeks smooth themselves out in recollection to contentless units, and the years grow hollow and collapse. Contentless units, that's the claim. A stretch of time doesn't feel long because it was long. It feels long because there's stuff in it when you go back looking. And there's an experiment that pulls those two apart, and I still can't believe it got approved. In 2007, David Eagleman's lab took people to a drop tower at an amusement park in Dallas, strapped a small screen to their forearm, and dropped them off the top, backwards into a net. The screen flickered numbers slightly too fast to read. And the logic is clean. If you really do get more frames per second when you're terrified, you should be able to read them on the way down. The fall took 2.5 seconds. Afterwards, people estimated their own fall as 36% longer than they had estimated somebody else's. So the illusion showed up right on cue. Nobody could read the numbers. Their performance in the air was no better than standing on the ground. Their perception never slowed down. They just wrote a denser memory and then read the size of the memory back as the length of the event. That's the mechanism in one drop. Time didn't stretch. The recording got thicker. You can watch the same thing at a tiny scale. Show someone the same image over and over, and then slip a different one in, and the different one feels like it was on screen longer, around 12% longer. Eagleman's group argued that the odd one isn't stretching. The repeated ones are shrinking. Your brain gets more efficient at handling something it's already seen, and a smaller neural response reads out as a shorter moment, which is a bleak thing to sit with if most of your week is the same commute. Although I want to be fair, because even that is contested, a group in Australia tested the efficiency explanation in 2023 and got results that don't fit it. They think it's attention. So inside the memory camp, people are still arguing about the mechanism. Now, the theory that got all the headlines, in 2019, a mechanical engineer at Duke named Bejan published a paper arguing this is physics, not psychology. His case is that what you experience as time is a sequence of mental images. Your eyes flick around 3 to 5 times a second, and roughly speaking, each fixation is a frame. As you age, he says, the frames come slower. Your body gets bigger, so the signal travels further. The pathways degrade, so it travels slower. Fewer frames per hour of clock time, so the hour feels shorter. It's an elegant idea, and it went everywhere. Physics explains why time flies. Great headline. Here's what the coverage left out. The paper contains no new data. None. It's a scaling argument plus a review of other people's studies. The aging evidence in it is that saccades get slower in elderly subjects, which is true, and that infants hold fixations for less time than adults, which is also true. Neither of those measures how many mental images a 40-year-old gets versus a 20-year-old. And there's a harder problem. His mechanism runs all the time. If your frame rate is quietly dropping, every interval should feel faster. The next hour, last week, last month, all of them. That's exactly the pattern Wittmann and Friedman went looking for and did not find. There is a real clock in there, though. In 2016, a lab in Lisbon trained mice to judge whether the gap between two tones was longer or shorter than 1.5 seconds, then used light to switch specific dopamine neurons on and off mid-judgment. Turn those neurons up, the mice underestimated the interval. Turn them down, they overestimated it. The clock isn't fixed. You can move it with a switch. And dopamine does fall with age. A study that scanned the same people repeatedly for 10 years found their D2 receptors dropping about 5% a decade through their 70s. So you can see the story people want to build out of that. Slower clock, faster years. The problem is scale. That work is about seconds. Nobody has shown the path from a mouse misjudging 1.5 seconds to a person losing a decade. So where does that leave it? The arithmetic theory is clean and overshoots by a factor of 2 or 3. The physics theory is elegant and predicts a pattern the surveys don't show. The clock theory is real and operates on a timescale nobody has connected to the question. The memory theory explains the 10-year answer well and doesn't explain why busy 20-year-olds say exactly the same thing. The one finding that survives all of it is the boring one. The people who say time is flying are the people who feel behind, which makes that 10-year question kind of a trap. Because from the inside, you can't tell whether the decade went fast because you got older or because you were busy. So which one was yours?